Hey, this is Dimitri with FreedomPassionPurpose.com. I'm really excited to be here with Andrew Horn today from AbilityList.com. We're here at the Underground Online Seminar with Yannick Silver. It's a really exciting event. We've been learning so much so far. I've met some incredible people here, like Andrew. Andrew has an incredible story that he just shared with me, starting from his youth. So let's actually get started with that. Andrew, tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I'll start verbatim from what I was just telling Dimitri. So I saw the back of his business card, and it said purpose-driven marketing. And I said, that's great. So what's your purpose? And it got back and he asked me, what is my purpose? And I started by saying that, well, when I was 21, I didn't really have a great deal of purpose, none really whatsoever. And so I had recently watched the film Into the Wild, based on the book by Krakauer. And in that story, he graduates college, really has no purpose, no identification of what life is all about. So he decides to decides to hitchhike to Alaska. So I decided that was going to be a good idea. So after graduation, I quit my cushy hospitality job, and I decided to take off with my dad to Alaska, just to do that, to find out what my purpose is, what I'm here to do. And on the way, some of the questions that I was asking myself was, what is it that I'm passionate about? And for a long time, I had a very difficult time answering those questions. And so those were the first things that I really wanted to identify on my trip out to Alaska. And on the way there and on the way back, what I was able to do was to finally identify my passions. And really what I did was by breaking it down, not so much on the activity itself. So not saying I'm passionate about sports, I'm passionate about photography, I'm passionate about music. What I tried to identify was what are the emotions that those activities elicit. So for sports, something that enables me to be physical, that enables me to be in shape. For photography, it's something that enables me to be creative, something that enables me to capture something unique that's very personal for me. And once I started to identify those actual emotions that were really kind of truly and inherently fulfilling for me, I said, so let's find all the activities that actually help me evoke those emotions, and I'd probably be happy. And those two activities that I could really identify as very important and purposeful to me were entrepreneurship and giving back and helping people. So upon my arrival back in DC, I worked for a successful entrepreneur, and I asked myself, what aren't I doing that I'd like to be? And that one question was that I wasn't helping enough people, I wasn't giving back as much as I'd like to. So that day, I decided to Google how to start a nonprofit. So don't tell my first boss that I was doing this while I was in her office. But I Googled how to start a nonprofit. I figured out everything that I need to do. And 4 months later, after my application went in, I got a certificate of authority to operate my nonprofit in Washington, D.C. And here we are today, successful nonprofit running in D.C.
Congratulations. Before, I really want to hear firstly about your nonprofit, what you do now, the kind of impact you have. But first, from the very beginning, that moment when you decided to, after college, you had a comfortable job and you left that and drove to Alaska with your dad.
Sure.
There must have been a lot of fear there, or there must have been a lot of emotion or passion or something there. Tell me about what that experience was like for you and what really drove you to make that decision and how you overcame any struggles in the process.
Sure. So there was a lot of fear about leaving that cushy job, but the fear was not so much the insecurity of not having a job, not necessarily having the funds to live the life that I thought that I would be at that stage in my life. The fear came after I had a conversation with a guy named Steve Robbins, who was a career consultant at Harvard Business School for some time. He also taught entrepreneurship at Babson College. And the conversation that we had was about these passions. And later, after this conversation, he got up and he was giving a lecture to a crowd of successful entrepreneurs at a conference that I've been able to go to over the past few years called Renaissance Weekend. And he sat in front of this room with very accomplished individuals, and he said, some of you will wake up tomorrow and you'll ask yourselves, what did I do with the last 10 years of my life? And then he said, some of you will wake up 10 years from now and ask yourself, what did I do with the last 10 years of my life? And he said, which one would you rather be? And so there I sat in the back of the room, and I just had this conversation about my passions and what I really wanted to do with my life. And Steve made this really poignant assertion that you're going to wake up one day and realize that you've either been doing and living the life that you wanted to, or you haven't been. And what he made me understand was that if I weren't going to ask that question now, I was going to ask it in 10 years. And as terrifying as it was to give up that cushy job, it made a lot more sense to go out on a limb to find that purpose at a young age, because it was going to happen later in life. I said I was going to need it. And so you're always going to have that moment where you're going to kind of jump off a bridge to really figure this out. And I realized that I'd rather be 21 when I ask it than 31.
Wow. That just inspired me so much. I'm getting emotional here. Wow. So now fast forward, tell me, what do you do now, and what do you do to make an impact? What do you do to fulfill that passion that you left your job for, and you left to Alaska for at 21 years old? How has everything materialized since then?
So the best advice I ever received on entrepreneurship was from a guy named Jeff Rosenthal, who is a co-founder of a really unbelievable and game-changing entrepreneurial meetup group called the Summit Series. And when I went to my first Summit Series conference, I had just started my nonprofit. I was there with guys like Seth Parker and Ted Leonsis and Richard Branson and Bill Clinton, and I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't belong in the same room with these people. And Jeff just kind of broke it down for me, and he was like, you absolutely belong here. He's like, you're passionate, you're creating something, you're learning. And one of the things he said is, you're going to see a lot of people in there who've made a lot of money. And he's like, but you're also going to see a lot of people in there that are solving the world's biggest problems. And he said, if you ever want to find purpose, it's like, just find a problem and fix it. And that's what these people are doing. And so I've always kind of taken it to that level that's very simple. It's that entrepreneurship for me is simply finding something that sucks, something that could be improved, something that you don't like, and fixing it. And so when I started the nonprofit here, it was just that. It was very personal. I wanted to be giving back, but I also saw that there was a lack of services for isolated groups of kids, whether they be children with disabilities, children who are isolated. So we started to create those programs. And then that same mantra stuck with me. And as I worked in the nonprofit sector, I started to see more institutional problems that were affecting these communities. So young people with disabilities, at-risk youth. And rather than kind of alleviating their circumstance momentarily, so whether it's providing a program where at the end of the day they're still impoverished or they're still living with a disability and isolated, we started to think about how can we actually alleviate this circumstance on a more transformational basis, so that people who are in poverty can lift themselves outside of it, that people with disabilities can continuously connect with their peers and with the programs and resources that they're working with. And one of the things that came to my mind was an issue that I had seen that was very prevalent in the disabled community. And one of the things that was happening there was that there are over 56 million people with disabilities in the United States, not including those who have an interest in the community, family members, spouses, friends, people who serve the disabled. And that there was a huge disconnect between the programs, services, activities that were available to help them integrate into society and live full lives, and what they could actually find. So what was happening was that people with disabilities are living these isolated lives, while the people who want to serve the disabled don't have an effective medium to do so. And so what happened is that programs are operating under capacity, and people with disabilities are the ones who suffer. And so what we said is that a lot of the companies and organizations serving the disabled are nonprofits, are government agencies, those that tend to be very bureaucratic, slow-moving, not very innovative. Where I was surrounded by all these innovators and entrepreneurs who are changing the way that we look at the world and that we interact with companies and everything. And so we said, well, how can we provide that experience for people with disabilities to improve the lives of millions? And what we said is, why don't we fix that disconnect? Let's make sure that all of the resources, all the programs, all the activities that are available for people with disabilities are available to people with disabilities, that they know how to find them. And so many of you are probably familiar with Craigslist, but we decided to say, let's create an online, localized, city-based platform to aggregate all of the services, programs, products, relationships, everything in a city, so that every person with a disability or who had an interest knew where to go to reach people with disabilities. And so now we're building that platform. We're launching here in Washington, D.C. So it's a for-profit social enterprise that has this platform that truly is going to empower the disabled to not only find what they want, but to share the things that are helpful to them. And then for those that have a financial interest in the disabled community, they now have an effective platform to reach out and impact and reach people with disabilities. So it truly is a win-win, and that's what we're most passionate about there.
Tell me about, you just mentioned for-profit social enterprise. Tell me a little bit more about that as a concept and what excites you about it.
Sure. What really excites me about being a for-profit social enterprise is that we're going to be able to properly fund this business so that we can finally create a platform that is worthy of people with disabilities. Too long they have had to look at websites, they've had to look at online databases and things that were aesthetically just ugly and difficult to navigate because a lot of the organizations that are serving them are under-resourced. They're nonprofits, they're government agencies. And so what's really exciting about this is that there are people who have an interest in people with disabilities. So they are going to spend money to reach them. But what's great is that now we can allocate those funds towards a business that is building a platform that is inherently beneficial for people with disabilities. So the more profitable we are, the more we're going to be able to scale this platform to smaller cities, to new cities, internationally, so that more people can benefit from this platform. More people will be able to access our services, the programs and things that are available to them. So I think that that's one of the things that really makes social entrepreneurship so exciting, is that the more successful that we are, the more people are going to benefit from this.
Wow. That's really exciting.
It is very exciting.
It sounds like a lot more of those are sprouting up in this new decade.
Yeah, I think it's very much kind of defining a generation of young people. There's a great New York Times op-ed called Generation Cell, and it talks about what is it that's going to define people of our generation. I'm 25, and what they said is that you look back and there was kind of like peace and love to define the hippies, and then there was Gen X, and they were kind of aggressive and angry and counterculture. And so I said, like, what's going to define our generation? And what they really said is that it's going to be entrepreneurship. And not necessarily entrepreneurship, but I think a big element is going to be social entrepreneurship. And the reason that I really believe that is that you're seeing a world manifest itself where information is ultimately accessible. Is that when I see Dimitri, the minute that I go home, I can look up his Facebook page, I can go on his LinkedIn, and I've got a pretty good snapshot of who he is, what he's done, the type of person that he is. And it's kind of like a holistic view of who he is. I don't just see his website now and then say, oh, look, Dimitri's created this website, but then I don't have any backstory. And so what I think is great is that you're getting a more complete picture of who everyone is and what people are doing in the world, whether that be a company or an individual. So in the olden days where we may have really glorified athletes and actors because they had these instances that we could see where they were perfect and pristine on camera or in commercials or in sports games, it's that now that you're seeing that when an athlete messes up or when an actor messes up, that's completely visible. And so you're seeing the entire person. Whereas you see a guy like Blake Mycoskie who gets the same type of visibility, but he's also doing something that's inherently beneficial and positive, and so people can rally behind that. So I think that what's going to be great is that you're going to see the people doing good in the world getting a lot more recognition for it, because it's going to be a lot more difficult to really kind of glorify those people that are not really contributing in the same vein as those that are really benefiting and contributing socially.
So you're saying basically because of a much more open communication and transparent and authentic world, largely because of the internet and the way that the internet has evolved into social media and commenting and crowdsourcing, there's just a lot more openness and communication among everybody.
Absolutely.
So it's really hard to hide behind media or hide behind a certain persona. And it's a lot easier for people to become people like yourself and other people that are making a great impact out there to become visible, regardless of whether the major media want them to. I
really do believe it. I think that while it is possible to create a persona online, that the true self is really going to become accessible and visible to everyone. And so those that are doing good will be recognized for it, and those that are not will not receive the same sort of recognition and notoriety.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's a
really positive outlook.
It's a very optimistic outlook of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So that's something to look forward to.
Wonderful. What would you say? You started at 21 and you made that big decision. Now you're 25 years old. You're having an impact on, I imagine, countless people, and it's going to keep increasing. And I can only imagine where you'll be. This is 4 years later, where you'll be when you're 30, you're 35. What would you say the best advice that you can give to youth, to middle school, high school, college age kids, as far as creating lives of passion and purpose for themselves?
Sure. I would say that it's very easy to be told how to live your lives when you're a young person. is that you'll have a lot of people who are telling you that this is the right way to do something, that this is the process that you'll need to walk through to get where you want to go, and you have a lot of people define what is success for you, but that at the end of the day, it's going to be unique for every individual. And that's why I realized that I was fortunate enough to be around. I have a mother who's an author and a speaker, and so I got to grow up around people that were very insightful and thought-provoking and kind of bought into positive values and virtues. And yet, I was 21 and I didn't have a lick of purpose. You know,
but you were quote successful.
Well, when I was 21, before all this happened, but I didn't have any purpose. I didn't have any sort of clarity. So when you talk about that, about finding purpose, is that I was there. I was 21 and I didn't have it. And what worked for me was not necessarily hearing someone tell me what was going to work, but it was just asking the questions to myself. And so what I would really encourage any young person that wants to have an impact, that wants to figure it out for themselves, that wants to find purpose, that wants to find personal fulfillment, is to simply start by asking yourself the right questions. And Dimitri can help you guys find some of those through the site. But it's a matter of finding the questions that are important to you. For me, it was, what am I passionate about? And understanding that there can be no real progress until you've answered those for yourself. And so it's asking yourself, what am I passionate about? Understanding what those are. Getting some clarity behind those. Saying, okay, this is what I'm passionate about. And then you can say, all right, so what aren't I doing that I could be? So what's something that would be in line with those passions? Whether that's entrepreneurship, whether that's music, whether that's acting, whether that's writing, whether that's biology. Whatever that thing may be, to just sit there and do the same thing that you did while you were identifying your passions. Figuring out what those were. Now say to yourself, what aren't I doing that I could be that would be in line with those passions? What's something I could be doing? And then to even make it more micro, it's just say, what's one thing I could be doing to engage that passion? What's one more thing I could be doing to get me where I think I want to be? And that's just the sequential strain that you'll walk down every single time, is that success is not a stagnant place. It's that what success was for me yesterday and what it is for Dimitri after being this conference has changed, and it will always be a moving target. You know, Dimitri's never going to get to a place and say, I made it, I'm successful, I'm out.
No, I'm done.
That's it. It doesn't happen that way. What happens is that you ask yourself the questions and you come up with these personal truths of what matters to you and why you want to do something. And then all you have to do is take that one step. Is that you're never going to be able to say, here's our business plan, this is the way it's going to work, and we're going to get there. It just doesn't work that way. But what I can say from personal experience and what worked for me is just that, is that when you have personal clarity about who you are and what you want to do, and you find yourself in the state of progressive motion where you're moving towards your goals that you've defined as something that's really important, that you'll find that fulfillment. And most importantly, as a young person, is that you'll find the energy to work hard.
Yes.
Because you will. You're going to bust your butt working for what you really want. It's hard, but when you have clarity about why you're doing something, you're going to have the energy to do it.
Yes.
So that's what it's like.
That's awesome. You just answered my next question. My next question was going to be, what do you say to the, and maybe you can add a little bit to it, is what do you say to the people that say, oh, well, that's great, you know, it's nice fluffy stuff, find your passion, your purpose, and do what you love, but I need to pay the bills. Or
Sure.
For parents looking at something like this and saying, well, that's great, my 15-year-old son can be passionate about music or passionate about whatever, but at the end of the day, they need to pay the bills, and they can't be doing all these crazy things, they need to go get a job.
Yeah.
And one of the answers that you just gave was, when you find something that you're super passionate about, you'll work harder, you'll find answers, you'll find people, you'll travel, you'll explore until you make it work in congruency with your life.
Yeah, I really do believe it as well. And I think that it's very true. It's that when I started my first business, I was working 8 to 6. My first business started from, I would say, the 6 to 12 shift. But I was happy to be there. Every time I was in the office, I just knew, and literally sometimes I would be overwhelmed with joy walking from job 1 to job 2 because I knew why I was going there. When someone asked me, what are you doing from 6 to 12? And I'd be like, I'm building this nonprofit. And I felt good about it. And that was invigorating for me. It was great. And I think that that's one of the things that I always tell people to ask themselves, is when they're saying, I've got so much going on, when could I possibly find the time to do everything else? And I think that once you make a choice to actually identify what your passions are and live this lifestyle of kind of a purpose-driven lifestyle, I guess we should call it, is it's as easy as just switching something. It's so that you just identify what is it in your life that's not bringing any value. For me, I threw my TV out 2 weeks after I started Dreams for Kids. The best thing I've ever done.
Awesome.
It's that just throw your TV out your window, like right after you watch this. Just get rid of it.
I have a TV, it collects dust.
It's the same thing. It's one of the easiest things. But in that same vein is, what's something that you do, whether that's going out, whether it may be like partying, or whether that's watching TV, whether it's whatever it may be, whatever's taking up time in your life that doesn't bring any value, or that you look at and you say, well, I didn't do anything. It doesn't evoke any sort of emotion, any action. You don't have to necessarily give that up. You just have to replace it with something new.
Yes.
So rather than watching TV, like I knew that I'd come home and I'd watch TV from 7 to 10 o'clock, or I'd play video games with friends. I said, well, now rather than doing that from 7 to 10, I'm going to work on a business plan, or I'm going to read a little bit. It's just replacing what you probably don't even care about, which actually probably makes you unhappy at the end of the day, with something that you know is going to make you happier. So it's not really giving anything up. It's just a little swap.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great. Where do you see yourself, everything you've done over the past 4 years is incredible, and where you are now is incredible. Where do you see yourself, let's say, 5 years from now?
In 5 years, I see myself, I recently fell in love, so I see myself with the woman of my dreams, which I'm most excited about. But beyond that, I really see in 5 years that Ability List would become the ubiquitous platform that Craigslist has achieved with general classified ads, so that in every city, if you know anyone with a disability, that they would have access to a platform in their local community that would truly enable them to take advantage of all of the resources, people, things in their community that could help them live a full life. And I see myself, we always talk about what is success to you, and the only answer I can ever really give that's honest to me is that I just really hope that I'm living life this way, because it's just living day to day and taking the time to have clarity and ask yourself the questions of what's really important for me today, and am I doing what I'm doing today because I want to be, or am I doing what I'm doing today because I did it yesterday?
I love that.
And I just hope that I'm living every single day because I want to be living that life.
That's great. I just want to repeat that question. Am I doing what I'm doing today because I want to, or am I doing what I'm doing today because I did it yesterday, the day before? Because it's what I know.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a super important question for everybody to ask themselves, kids, parents, everybody watching this.
I think so.
What would you say, we've got, I think, 25 minutes of incredibly inspiring, educating content. What would you say if somebody could take one thing away from this interview that would bring a lot of value to their lives, whether they're 13 or 20 or 30 or 35 or whatever? What would you say that thing would be?
I just tell you to take 1 minute, and I would just say close your eyes and ask yourself that one question of, what am I passionate about? Don't start, don't do anything until you have an answer. It's not the most accessible thing in the world to ask yourself that question and get it. But I just promise you that clarity about what it is that you care about, whatever that may be, whether it's an activity, whether it's emotion, whether it's creativity, whether it's physical activity, entrepreneurship, reading, education, anything, that having real clarity about what you care about is the catalyst to launching everything else. And then beyond that clarity about what's important to you and what you do care about is the power of starting. Is something that my mom says is, no one can get on your bandwagon if it's parked in the garage. And it's true. No one can help you do what you want to do if you're not doing it.
I love that. That's been the advice I've been given. That one key point has been the advice I've been given for years while I was in college trying to build my businesses. It's like parts all over the place. Pick one thing that you're super passionate about. Put it together. Work super hard until it's put together. And everything will come together for you after that.
Yeah, it's true. It's especially as a young entrepreneur, and Dimitri and I can attest to this, is that everyone who's engaged in this lifestyle, anyone who's succeeded at this lifestyle of youth entrepreneurship, they've fought the same battles that you're going to fight, and they want to help. That's why Dimitri is here at the Underground Conference, because these successful entrepreneurs wanted to give back. They wanted to share the insight and the expertise with someone like Dimitri, who's an up-and-comer, who's doing great things, because they wanted that advice when they were young. And the same way that we received it and it helped us to achieve our success right now, we want to pass that on. And so anyone can be the beneficiary of that is that once you're engaged in this sort of lifestyle, that you will have conversations that are actually relevant and meaningful to you. You'll partake in more activities that are fun and that you remember and that are meaningful. And so I really just think it's just that. It's that try and get some clarity. Don't stop asking yourself that question until you have it, and then start. Because as soon as you do, you'll find that it's just going to be a snowball, and it's a lot of fun.
Thank you so much,
Dimitri, it was a pleasure. Don't forget www.abilitylist.com. We'd love to come to your city. So if you're interested and you'd like to chat with us about that, see how you can get involved, Andrew at abilitylist.com. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. Go out there, make an impact, live a life of freedom, passion, and purpose. We're here for you.